I'd just like to introduce myself, Lance Christie. I'm in the kitchen of my home, and the subject of this little session of videos is good. And that necessarily brings up the subject of evil. I made the statement the other day on social media that good things happen to good people. I believe that. And I think it should give us hope. Because I believe that most of the population of the UK and the world are good. Good people who want to earn an honest crust, to make a good living, do well for their families, do well for community and wider if the opportunity presents itself. So this brings up the whole question of free will and making decisions in our life. It also brings up the question of the societies we're in, the cultures we're in, the big forces for good or evil, as the case might be, that we're subjected to. But fundamentally, good people carry on doing good regardless of their circumstances. That's wonderful. I'm not bothered whether you're a road sweeper, a lawyer, a fireman, or a comedian. whatever your calling, do it honestly, do it well. And I think I can speak for humanity when I say most of us just want everyone to do right so that we can trust people and make ourselves vulnerable. Because that's what happens in a family, isn't it? Family is a very precious unit where you're loved. So if you make a mistake, we understand. It's only the old man or whatever, you know. And we forgive and love and carry on working the family out together. There's no punishment. There's no catching out. Kids tend to get away with as much as they can. And if they go over the line, the old man has to, give them a stern word or two, perhaps. But that's just the rough and tumble of family life. My father was brilliant at it. He coped with an awful lot, but kept a humour and was a great father. Well, this isn't about me. This is a matter now of standing back and assessing these great systems that we're accountable to and their leaders, because you can always judge, I believe, you can judge a system by its leader. They've appointed the leader, potentially, unless he's a dictator and he's been appointed under false pretenses. So, what have we got? I believe we've got the force of the government, which includes the legal system and the police, to keep the whole world safe, so that we can thrive. And we're subject to the laws, like the traffic lights. We have to stop our cars, don't we? It'd be mayhem if we didn't. All that sort of stuff. Speed limits, I'm afraid I'm not very good at abiding by them. I've been caught a few times. So I have to be subject to the law of the land. The other area is what we call Christianity. Others may call it the greater. Others might call it the universe. There are other religions in the world which generally, one would expect to stand for what's just and right and fair. And I know many pastors of many churches who have just given their lives up to provide a great example to their flock and just put themselves out. Just can demonstrate. They just demonstrate that Spirit of Christ, which will do anything to help anyone. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And the other big world is business. And, that is another area where you get a mixture, don't you? But there are some great business leaders who consider for their employees, treat them fairly, want the greater good as a result of the contribution of their business, fill in their taxes and their accounts very, very accurately, don't exploit loopholes, generally run great businesses which contribute to the good of all, provide work for families, livelihoods, and generous bosses pay their staff well and are glad when their staff thrive as a result of the good and the money, if you like, the profits that the business is generating. So that's all good. So what we are looking for in society, I believe, are leaders who hold themselves accountable to all, certainly to the governments of our countries and to the population. So that's to everybody. So that is why we get charities, don't we? The government support charities because they've not got the good of humanity. It means kindness. Charity means kindness. We expect transparency. I think honesty is fundamental to society. So if if we're a good person, we're honest and we hold ourselves accountable and we just try and bring good, I call it Christian principles, into society. So we may not go to church, that's fine, but so long as we bring Christian values to bear, so we set out what Christianity is meant to be. And that's worthy of charitable status. People that help the oppressed, want the best for humanity, genuine Christians who just want to do good and need and deserve the support of the country and the taxpayer. We love it, don't we? We love it, it's good. Now the trouble is that bad people sometimes infiltrate. So evil infiltrates good. And we get very muddled and we get lost in the sea of complexities. I'm afraid that's probably a consequence of our democratic system, which is generally safe, and I support it. But we've just got to look at some of the issues that go on. If the police are unduly punishing, or the legal system is, and I'm not saying it is, there's something wrong. So the police, the legal system, and the government supremely, and religious leaders supremely, should hold themselves accountable. Am I doing good here? Am I doing bad? And that's the trouble with that is that some of us haven't really sorted out in ourselves what's good and what's bad. That's a battle we've all got to sort out in ourselves. Because if you think about free will, it comes from the heart. You make decisions emotionally. It's not all brain. The mind is very important. The mind is vital. Spirit, soul and body. So this whole concept of free will means that if we're making good choices, and that becomes our purpose in life, our calling, if you like, all things work together for good to those that love God, that's goodness, and are called according to purpose. That means that you've got a sense that good is sending you a certain way. It may mean that you have to leave your job, or leave your religion, or even leave your family, sadly. But you have to be guided by your moral compass, if you like, by your conscience, that link you've got with the higher. It's a wonderful thing. You feel you're on a wave when you're, how can I liken it, a wave of the sea, and you're just rolling through, but you know you're carried because you've got a link with something far greater than any system of man. Don't forget, systems of men may have been set up just to sort out the evil. But then we've got all sorts of systems. We've got the National Health Service. Well, you see, the danger there is that it has to accommodate everybody, and yet it's run by the government. We've got utilities, massively important at the moment, big issues with cost of heating. The UK is very cold at the moment. So we've got we've got transport. After having a few words with David Cameron in 2015, I was put on the Transport Committee, Leeds Chamber of Commerce. So I'm very privileged to have a part in trying to bring good transport systems to the north of England. It's a big struggle, but I think London are getting the message that the north needs more input, more financial input, because, hey, down the south, they've got far more per head. I think it's 10 or 12 times more per head than we've had in the north. So there's a whole need to balance things. And the danger is that individual organisations push their own agenda. So the utility companies, take this tunnel here, the Woodhead Tunnel, just down the road from where I live. I live in Silkstone, near Penistone, which is not far from Barnsley. And a great part of the world, I recommend it. But 3 tunnels from the Lancashire side through to Yorkshire, filled with pipes and cables. It was built for trains. I remember the trains running. I actually remember them, little boy, looking down from the hills, watching them build the M62, Scamden Dam. So I've lived a few years, and I'd love to influence, because I think it's very, very simple. And I'm getting a bit off track here, but we need good in east-west connections, more so than the M62, and we need to, we just need to filter traffic from the northeast, down through the north of Leeds and over to the west that way. And we've got a plan. I know exactly what's needed, but it's very difficult to persuade the country. So we need togetherness, and we can only get togetherness if we can demonstrate that we've got the good of all, not just Yorkshire, not just Manchester, Wars of the Roses, no, the whole country. And consequently, Britain's more able to be a force. And we know that if we build good roads, good railway systems, etc., the whole place benefits, because business thrives and because you've got good connections. So life's all about communication and connection. And that's really where I'm going, that we need to look. I've just tried to look at the big picture. I will now start to look at some of the issues we've got and see if we can solve them, because I'm sure we can. So we've got these big organisations, as we've said, religion, if you like, call it that, the government, and we've got finance, the business world, massive need for people to survive, so they have to tap into the money-making machines of this world. So what we're saying is, what should permeate all those organisations is honesty. That means telling the truth. We don't trust liars. It's fundamental. the fundamental commitment that we should make in all life decisions is to be truthful and honest. And then we're reliable. People can trust us. We're not belying trust. And if we join on that platform, we're strong together, very strong, because we will expose evil. So, how's that going to work out? Well, we have to make a stand against wrongdoing. We have to, if we're bothered about wrongdoing, if you're bothered if somebody goes down your high street and puts a brick through a window and takes jewellery, you will do something about it. If you just walk on the other side for your own safety, you're certainly not making the world a better place. So let's just get down to it. Do we intervene as people when wrong is going on? Do we stand for justice and fairness? Have we got the moral fortitude, the guts to stand up strongly for what's right? So, uphold standards without fear, without favouritism. Don't pander to some people and punish others. That leads to hierarchies and people trying to get in with the guy that's able to control things and influence things. That's political. We should keep a line between business and the commercial world, government and religion. If you start mixing them up, it gets extremely toxic. And people inside those systems can lose their sense of right and wrong because they're trying to accommodate all sorts of people because they're surviving on votes and popularity. How good's that? Clearly wrong. So stand up for morals, your God-given innate sense of right and wrong. And that is how you take up responsibility and how you become a rock in choppy waters, in a crisis. And people will come to you because you're stable and you're proven and you're not going to budge for strong influences that you know are wrong, or perhaps you can't quite work it out. You just have that innate sense that something's wrong. Well, ask questions. Don't be afraid. Because I know we do like to stay in our comfort zone. Well, if that's all we're doing in life, we're born into an environment and we're just going to go with everything that goes and drop our standards to keep in with people. And if they lift us up, well, we'll go with them, but we'll never say boo to a goose. Where's your moral platform? Where's your sounding board? It's just not good enough. So this country and Europe and then the world will become strong. And Britain is a very influential country worldwide when it comes to justice. We've got we've got a good legal system. We've got a good government. But I'm afraid it's being infiltrated and weakened by evil in one form or another. So that's why we need to sort it out ourselves. And if you've got caught up in something that's out of your control, step out, step back, look at it from outside, and look at the big picture. It may be you've been caught up in a very small picture and just been taken away and had to make a few decisions against your conscience along the way, maybe because of coercion, maybe because of pressure. And you find yourself in a sea of evil now that you can't control. Well, there's always an outlet. If you know Christ, you can always repent. And that's the beauty of the work that he did on the cross. It means that we own our sin and our sins are forgiven. But then, of course, if it affects others, we have to put it right with others, don't we? And if it's something that's illegal, we have to go and own up to the government and the authorities, whether it be the police. There will be plenty of advice on that for you. I believe that there needs to be very clear lines between each of those systems that I mentioned. So, take religion. That's created to bring in healing and set people up, bring people to Christ, or whatever they believe. But for the Christian, there's no alternative. And fundamentally, the laws of our country have been built on principles outlined in Scripture. Many would debate that. Fair enough. We're not going to fall out over that one. That's the trouble, the enmity between religions. That's a deep matter. But let's keep all that separate. There's enough toxicity between religions. Now, government is a separate entity. It's a force that's there to bring law and order so that we can thrive. So when you start getting links between Christian organisations and government, it can become very toxic, very dodgy, and very difficult for people who have grown up understanding politics and the law and how the system of justice works to understand how religion works. Obviously. So it's not fair to encumber politicians with moral decisions. Absolutely wrong. If any religious leaders doing that, they need to think again and completely go back to square one and work out whether they are running their religion on the beautiful fundamentals of Christianity, which include doing unto others as you'd have done to yourself, obviously, honesty, and having the good of all. And then politicians who are getting involved in religions and deciding whether they're charitable or not need to be very aware that if there's anything false or pretentious or less than truthful or dishonest in the religious organisation, it needs great discernment, probably beyond what they've got, probably beyond what their little group of the Charity Commission have got. And it's all back to honesty. If I can't cope with something, whether I'm a religious leader, a business leader, or a government leader, I need to be honest. I think it doesn't need a lot of brains to work out that Boris Johnson wasn't honest, and that was his undoing. Did some good things. Get Brexit done was a good thing, because the people wanted it. End of. But I'm afraid the man got off track. So we need people with moral foundations, understanding values, the values of society that we thrive on, to run our countries. Take the business world. If you've got businessmen interfering with government. I was a businessman, and I was authorised by David Cameron to get involved in transport. Well, that was all for the good. I mean, we do need business input. Of course we do, in government. But that's got to be done in a very open, honest way. If I had some affiliation to some big engineering company, and orders I got for road building meant a lot to me, I would be disqualified from being on the Transport Committee. As it happens, I've actually been chucked out of my business, chucked out of my religion, chucked out of a social circle, so I'm a free man, and this is why I've got such a clear mind now, because I've worked out that the devil, you might say, the evil, the devil, as we think of God up there, the devil down here, and, you know, it's not quite, we're in the middle, aren't we? So we have to decide whether we're going for good or bad. So if we're thrust into a transport committee, we have to think for the good of the whole country. And of course, in Leeds, we have to think of the good of the north of England. And so that is what one has tried to do in a simple way. And then, of course, there's so much red tape that it's difficult, despite going to Parliament and getting an early day motion, difficult to get things through because there's so many points of view. Well, let's get back. Life is essentially simple. Let's do good for all. And let's never be influenced by our own personal programme, our own personal agendas. So let's keep these big forces, the need for money, the government of our countries and religion separate. Religion has got mighty wealthy. Yeah. Why? Big question. I think I've worked it out, but I'm not here to talk about that, except that I'm now going to move on to the question of, I'm going to move on to the whole question of PPE orders at the time of crisis. So, let's face it, a crisis, the COVID crisis, hit the country in March 2020. Is that right? No, 2021. Sorry. I'm trying to think now. No, it's 2020. And of course, we were in turmoil, weren't we? People were dying. So what do? We turned to the National Health Service. And let me tell you this, the National Health Service have got super doctors, many super doctors, super nurses. And that's really what we value in the National Health Service. So, they then reached out to the business world, and you might say they are sitting between government. They're really a government body. They are, in this country, very much a government body. So they reached out to the business world and said, hey, we need PPE equipment quick. We've got a crisis. A bit like a war breaking out. You know, we've got resources in the country that we turn to. We expect those to be thinking for the good of the whole. So in other words, if you turn to a business for PPE equipment, you expect that to be right every time. And the businesses to undertake their own quality checks without any doubt. You should never, ever supply underpowered stuff, especially, you imagine, if the military were going out and the uniforms were dodgy. Well, if you're supplying dodgy surgical gowns to these hard-working, wonderful nurses who are risking all life and limb to save lives, what sort of people are you? So, a secret back channel was set up to help friends of the Conservative Party get quick orders, fast orders at a time of crisis. And it's amazing who came out of the woodwork first, very, very, very early indeed, and who were fast-tracked into wealth. And I'm coming on to that. But friends of the Conservative Party were 10 times more likely to win contracts and make millions and billions of pounds than the average normal tender business doing a proper tender without any special connection. So it's not fair on most of the business world. You might say the mainstream, genuine, honest, which I believe is most. I certainly tried to run a business that way. It's not fair on them if there's favouritism towards anyone that supports the Conservative Party. Clearly, that's fundamental. So, it's been established that companies with political affiliation to the Conservatives were 10 times more likely to win contracts at that time than others. And so, what were the rest of the country doing? Making sacrifices and personal sacrifices to save lives. That is true humanity. That's what attracts me. Making money out of the crisis is from the pits, as far as I'm concerned. Going to save lives, absolutely. And that That is, they are the lovely doctors and nurses, people that set out. They've made a decision in life, maybe in their teens, to be a nurse or be a doctor. Why? Because they love saving lives. Wonderful, wonderful people. And we need to do that in our lives. If we find ourselves now in something that's from the pit, in other words, making gain out of people's calamity, we need to think and analyse. Why did I do it? Who told me to do it? Where did I get the idea from? And if it's from a leader of your business, well, go and speak to him. Make a stand. Be brave. Stand up for humanity. Stand up for your Christian beliefs. Be Christ-like. He stood tall between good and evil and won the victory over evil by being good. He bore the price. Yes, you might say he died. Yeah, but he got the victory over death. He set us free by dying. It's a wonderful, simple truth of Christianity, which is foundational and should really colour our lives. So, corruption costs lives. And this is what we need to dig out and bring out of the woodwork. And so I'm just going to now go over the first example of a business person who's been found out as taking advantage of the crisis for her own personal gain. That person was none other than Michelle Mone, the bra queen, the laundry queen of England. She owned a conglomerate of laundry companies. I used to be in the clothing trade and tried to do business with her. I never managed. Probably a good job. But this young lady, I was just going down to get some stuff from the store, local store, on the 7th of December. Notice this paper, The Guardian. Mone lobbied for second firm with secret links to husband. There she is in all her glory. Yeah, quite a curvaceous lady. And outwardly very glamorous. Whoa. But I look within. I judge. I don't judge a book by its cover. I look deeper. I believe that love and admiration comes from deep respect, and you actually learn to discern whether a person is really good and lives by their values. Anyway, for somehow her first step, I'm going to go through 20-odd steps of how Michelle Mone managed to utilise the COVID calamity for her own gain. And of course, it's taken quite a bit of unravelling. So, first step was she got into the House of Lords. She's Baroness Michelle Mone of Mayfair. You know, in the old Monopoly balls, Mayfair was the top property, wasn't it, to get? And, you know, you might say she's the ultimate of a woman. Well, you know. Anyway, having got not all baronesses are bad. I mean, my second cousin, Jill Knight, wonderful, Baroness Jill Knight. She did a lot for the country. She changed law 8 times to help the country. That's what we need at the moment. We need to change the law to outlaw cults or people who exert authority and so control people. So there's psychological slavery. Awful stuff. You can manipulate minds to serve your purposes. How evil is that? Under the guise of religion? Never. It's all about Christ's religion, not religious leaders. Of course, there's some good pastors, good people that put themselves out, as I said, but there are some bad people as well. And we need to have the discernment and understanding to work out who is good and who is bad. And we do that by looking at ourselves and sorting out the good and bad in ourselves. So her second step, she used her political connections to make millions of pounds out of useless PPE while nurses and doctors struggled. So she decided to do that in her mind, decides to do a bad thing. She made that decision. That was her free will. So what did she do? She actually went to visit, she wrote to Senior Minister Michael Gove. He was in the cabinet, very influential. Yeah, so she wrote a letter. Very, very plausible way to start a campaign. Next, she persuaded Gove sufficiently for him to suggest that she contacted Theodore Agnew, who's a Tory peer. Next, she used a private email address that could not be seen by the public. No accountability, all very hidden, all very secretive. Next, so consequently, she was violating the freedom of information laws. You know, there's freedom of information laws in this country which should apply to lords, peers, baronesses, prime ministers, the lot. She told her fellow Conservative politicians that large numbers of PPE equipment could be procured by her team in Hong Kong. Wow, I've got a team in Hong Kong. We can get stuff quick and get it into the National Health Service quick. So save nurses and doctors getting contaminated by this awful disease. Wow, what a sales ploy. Fantastic. Next, she said that she had PPE, she said that her firm PPE MedPro could get these supplies very quickly. So it's all as though it was all set up, everything hunky-dory, ready to roll. Woof. So, next step was that her offer was added to the secret VIP lane for a fast-track system created by the Tory government for lucrative PPE offers from well-placed figures. So, because she had infiltrated the Conservative Party, she was getting preferential treatment. Not good. At this point, although she sold PPE MedPro, it didn't even exist. It was only incorporate. So she next thing she did was to incorporate PPE MedPro. 4 days after she sent this registration didn't go through until 4 days after she sent the email to Michael Gove. So she was working quick for her own ends. By the end of June, the government had contracted to pay 230 million of public, constituting 210 million PPE masks and 25 million surgical gowns. By then, there had been many National Health Service workers died. Many had to work complete days, attending to various different patients using one face mask. There just weren't enough to go round. So, what happened to these masks that had been ordered for urgent delivery from Hong Kong? Did she use the fastest method, air delivery, to get them there quickly? Like I would have done in my business. I love responding to crises. That's how I was successful in business. Customers would ring me, ask me to go along, sort out the problems. That's what I love doing. A lot of people do. Don't create problems, solve problems. So, lo and behold, all 25 million of the surgical gowns were rejected. They didn't come up to the spec required by the Department of Health. So, complete waste of money. They never made it to the hospital wards. And by autumn, you know, the nurses and doctors were working hard, but it was a struggle to keep the National Health Service afloat. They were relying on good suppliers with proven track records that could deliver what they said they'd deliver. Ever heard about under-promising and over-delivering? That's what a Christian does. Yes, that's what Christ did, speaking reverently. Let's be on the line of not promising to do what we can't do or making out we're better than we are. Let's give people a surprise by being better than we say we are, or certainly as good as we say we are. That's good enough. So, and then what happened next? It was decided to shift the money to the Isle of Man. Why? Oh, it's a bit of an offshore tax haven, isn't it? There's offshore banking. Yes. No capital gains, no stamp duty or inheritance tax. Top rate of income tax 20%. Wow, good idea, Michelle. And Barrowman, her husband-to-be, was focusing on moving tens of millions of pounds around in the Isle of Man via registered trusts, companies, and through different accounts. Next step, the journalists, bless them, the media started asking questions. And, they asked, what's all this PPE MedPro about? And the huge government contracts they've been awarded. Oh, Michelle Mone, I have no role in the process. I don't have any connection with this. Yeah, they're good at lying, aren't they? Some of these leaders, yeah, whether they be business leaders or religious leaders. And Mone's lawyers, the press knocked on their door. Oh, Michelle doesn't benefit financially from these contracts. Yes, 203 million has been passed to PPE MedPro, but that's nothing to do with Michelle. And even now, today, they deny any wrongdoing. So, anyway, next stage. HSBC actually, crucially, dropped word that 65 million of the profits from MedPro was transferred to the Warren Trust, registered in the Isle of Man, whose beneficial owner was Douglas Barrowman, Mone's fiance. Wow, we're starting to unravel a few things now, aren't we? Yeah. And then, next step, 45 million of that 65 million was transferred to Barrowman's private account, personal account. And then, next step, 29 million was then transferred from there to the Kerristal Trust, registered in the Isle of Man, whose beneficiaries were Michelle Mone and her grown-up children. Family trusts, yeah. Never heard of them before. Yes, and they're very clever sales abilities. If you're a kind business owner, you will give to your family and lose control yourself. How good's that? So, 29 million just came into the reach of Michelle Mone, originating from the profit of the PPE business. And that money was made What? From surgical largely from surgical gowns that were useless. The government keeps tight-lipped. Very much so. And for certain reasons. And, you know, the press have come onto this. But what I'd like to point up is that I've asked questions of Michelle Dolan, who is the cultural minister, responsible for religion. And I'm waiting for an answer. Meanwhile, Nick Smith, Member of Parliament, has asked questions in Parliament. Good on him. And it reads like this. I rise to support the motion on PPE, whereby a band of profiteers, some of whom took advantage of their political links, exploited our country's desperation. Many of these opportunities use chicanery and secrecy to make eye-watering profits. Now, the UK Department of Health and Social Care is withholding information on the cost of staffing its contractual battles with some of these PPE suppliers. And then it goes on to say the department currently holds 13.2 billion items of PPE, and the cost of storage is a staggering £770,000 per day. Storing rubbish. That works out to about £128 million a year. And then he moves on about accounts being almost impossible to trace and track. But he commends the Sunday Times for exposing a network of companies with connections to conservative lobbyists, one of which is Santee Global, formerly Unispace Health. Unispace Global won PPE contracts worth nearly 700 million, he's saying. And that's been exposed via private eye. So, this has come up in Parliament. The information is shrouded in secrecy due to our feeble accountancy laws. But the taxpayer deserves to know who is profiteering from contracts awarded by the government with public money for the public benefit. These companies should be made, listen, to publish full details of their income, profits, commissions, dividends and big boss bonuses. The Chancellor should then consider a windfall tax on their super profits. The government could also learn a lesson in transparency, because they have been trying to dodge questions on the continuing cost of PPE. There are now disputed contracts worth £2.6 billion with 176 companies. Now there we are. We've got an MP, Nick Smith, who has stood bravely in Parliament and he's raising questions. And that's what I'm linking on with. And I think that the time has come for me to expose Santee Global, because that is completely owned by the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church and its leaders. So the time has come for good people to stand up and do something about this. It's when evil flourishes, when good people stand by and do nothing. I think brave people need to hold companies to account that have taken advantage of a crisis in our country. So, sorry about that interruption. Technology. I actually grew up without computers. My religion didn't allow it until 2006. And then the domains that I used were all taken away from me when I left, and just before, when I was booted out of the religion. So it's amazing that from March 2017, when I was booted out, I've been able to pull myself together, because they tried to cut off all my history, all my information, all my trails, obviously, in case I decided to raise any questions. They didn't think I had any evidence, did they? Actually, I'm very much a paperwork man, so I kept diaries right back from 1988, and I used to print off my emails, have my secretary, so I relied very much on my secretary for IT, so I've actually been able to claw back and find out the facts and bring them up against the people. Now that's not good. If you cut off somebody's records, burn the records or shred them or whatever you do, that's bad, because you're cutting off someone's hand. Takes a bit of recovering. So Steve Jobs, I've just rung Apple Care. My storage was full. Lovely people, and they've set me up again because I couldn't do any more recording. But actually there's a care system at Apple, and you're not forced to buy the Apple system, no way. It's expensive, yes, but it's very good. And the leader of the religion I was in likened Steve Jobs to the owner of Apple, to the man of sin. Why? Because he came up with a system that protected individuals from predators like the leader of the religion, who was trying to destroy and upset and ruin people psychologically, financially, family-wise, take away their social circle. So people in control have got to be good. And people who they're controlling have got to ask questions and be brave. And if he's good, applaud him. If he's bad, if he's the wrong side of the line, take issue with him. That's how we keep the world a safer place. I'm not bothered whether it's a religious leader or a lingerie leader. You know, they're both fairly curvaceous in different ways. But as I say, the principles remain. And I'm not going to be deflective from my principles, which I've learnt, not from the leader of the religion, but from other people in the religion. And people wider than a lot in that religion. I've reached out wider. I know a little bit about finance. I wasn't allowed to do any further education after school, so they didn't think I was educated enough to do what I've done. Okay? So it's coming back to bite them. Because of me? No, I'm not a vengeful person, but because justice, God sees to it that the wheels of justice turn. They may turn ever so slowly, but they do turn. That's the same as what I started with. Good things happen to good people. Have you got faith? Do you believe in the greater? Or just repent if you're not in touch with the greater, and just be encouraged if you are, because things will be okay. They may not look to be too good at the moment. They'll be okay. So this religion, the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, I used to be a member of till I was excommunicated some 6 years ago. And I've written to the leader in Sydney, Australia, 8 times now. I've been to his house 7 times, trying to get dialogue. No response to my letters. Efforts to knock on his door, doesn't reply. So this is quite an exposure, really. I happen to know a lot of other leaders who have written in, trying to make some sense out of his excommunication and separation doctrine, which causes a lot of hurt, keeps families separated. It was only less than 2 weeks ago that the religion, via my nephew, Neil Christie, had me in jail for a night at my ripe old age of 67. Of course, I survived. But it's sobering to think that my own father, Neil's grandfather, died at my age. The man was broken-hearted at the way he'd been treated by this awful religion. I had it looked into. I bravely suggested that it should be looked into, and the whole thing was overturned. It was accepted in the Leeds Assembly that they should never withdraw from him. Now the Leeds Assembly are rising up against me like a gang and basically saying I'm a heretic and so bad, defaming me in the eyes of my family and the congregation, and consequently 55,000 brethren, because that's the number that there are around the world roughly. So the leader can say I'm bad. He can say I'm good. Whatever comes out of his mouth is gospel for them. No accountability. He's the man of God, you see. Direct communication to heaven, apparently. So let's just say that, yeah, my friend Richard Marsh from Cambridge would be from one of the most intelligent families in the UK. And then there were the Robertsons from Oxford. Yeah, Cambridge and Oxford. One or two of the intelligent families. But let's stick to them. And who comes first onto the scene to get a PPE contract under the name of Medco? Not Michel Mone's MedPro, but Medco. Was that a coincidence that the names are so similar? In March, newly created company, like so many, they hadn't had any experience in PPE, not really. They're all affiliated to Unispace, Santa Global, who are office fit-out company. So, just in the same way as Michelle was the bra queen, the brethren are known for their office fit-out. Well, why give them orders for PPE equipment, especially when it turns out to be dodgy? So much of it turns out to be dodgy. We've got all these warehouses full of unused goods, all at the taxpayers' expense. Awful mismanagement. And then there was another company, Top Elm, and they all came out of the woodwork very, very quickly, just at the time that the epidemic broke out. So it's not looking too good. And just to give a bit of background, there was a big battle between the Brethren religion and the government back in 2012, 13, 14, where their charitable status, which was worth £30 million a year roughly, was in jeopardy. And so they cozied up, to the Conservative MPs to make sure that they got their charitable status, and put on a very, very strong legal team, and had us all running around speaking to MPs around the country to try and point up how terrible it would be if the brethren lost their charitable status, because other religions may follow on too. I had to go and see Sikhs, Muslims, and say, hey, you might lose your charitable status, we use ours. Panic, panic, panic. So that wasn't going to be the case at all. So it's amazing what stories you can come up with when you might be going to lose a bit of money. So this religion is hiding very much under a religious facade, but it's actually very much a money-making machine. I can see that now I'm out. It's very difficult to see when you're inside. I gave my money generously when I was in there, because that's me. I just love helping people. But that's another story. And then, the whole thing goes on, and the amount of PPE equipment, and this is the big news, the amount of PPE equipment and lateral flow test awards by the British government to this religion is £2.5 billion, of which some 2 billion can be attributed to the Unispace operation, or Santa Global, which is the Hales family, owned by the leader and his family in Sydney, Australia. So what I'm saying is that this needs some close investigation as to where the money's gone. We've managed to find out now what happened to the public money and Michelle Mone. Well, we need to do the same with the Hales family. And it needs some close forensic investigation. And I support that. And I think that's what the MP, Nick Smith, was after. And I'm sure that the government needs to rise to that. Now, the danger is, and it happened with the Dprox matter, where Brethren companies supplied dodgy disinfectant machines to National Health Service operating theatres, etc. Of course, when they're implicated, and if people die because of it, or nurses are implicated, and doctors, they don't want to look into it because it's going to cost money. So we must break through this awful need to make money and get through to what, if that's your motive in a crisis to make money, what about all the people that are sacrificing their lives? Think of the war. What happened? The whole financial situation goes on hold while we all work together to save a crisis. Same with the COVID. So people that make money out of crises are wrong. It's completely wrong. And it needs to be searched out. And we need to find out whether we've got good citizens in this country, like doctors and nurses, as I've mentioned, who are prepared to sacrifice their own comforts for the good of the whole. And that is a good person. You don't take advantage out of people when they're suffering and dying. Shocking, shocking, shocking. It's utter hypocrisy if a religion takes advantage commercially of a national crisis. That's not what religions are for. Keep the business and the money making to one side. Keep it separate, utterly separate from your religion and your area of control because you're a religious leader. Keep it separate from the government and be very, very accountable and open and honest and transparent if there are dealings going on between these different bodies. And then the country and the population, the citizens of the country, start to have confidence in you. You're not trying to hide things behind the back and do things in a sinister, secretive way. So the thing is that another company who benefited enormously, it was Sterilab. People I know, the Frizzels of Harrogate, who moved over from South Africa in 1999, and we tried to support them because we felt sorry for the guys because they were fleeing the violence out there. Well, if they come to this country, they can jolly well abide by our standards. And that is that you're upfront and honest about your business. And Sterilab have been hiding their link with Unispace. It's just not obvious when you look into their website. And, it's hidden away, or these PPE orders are hidden away under the testing side of things, under lateral flow tests. So, the Brethren can say there's no obvious links with the government and we're just a religion and we're charitable, but they weave a web. And there's whole hidden areas that need searching out because they're not a household name, they're not big, there's only 16,000 or 17,000 Brethren in the UK. And just work out how much that is per head at 2.5 billion. It's just outrageous. I mean, Michelle Mone was only 200 million. She's 2.5 billion. So the country is making religious leaders or businessmen who are posing as religious leaders very rich. So we can't be deceived. We shouldn't be sucked in. We should stand firm and say, this is Britain. We have our standards and we're not going to have it. Nor should the people in the religion have it. They're so litigious as well. If you start raising any questions against the Haleses or the Plymouth Brethren Christian Church, yeah, they'd be in jail less than 2 weeks ago. They've already been pulverising me. I've had to spend some £1.5 million fighting them legally. I've won 10 cases out of 10. Threats, yeah, they come with all their might and club together and use congregations' money like they used to use mine. I didn't realise they were using it in legal cases against genuine people like myself. But it's not a good thing. And somebody needs to stand up and stop it. And that will be as it's exposed. And I trust that some of the leaders, after listening to this, will come forward and go to the police, go to their MPs and just acknowledge what they've done. And then that is the start towards healing, because if you're open and honest, we can look in and try and do our best for you. But if you're hiding away and slinking away and damaging people and dividing families and bringing big walls of separation between families and abusing people by exterminating them, in other words, shutting them up away from their families and then withdrawing from them, that's just downright abuse, and it's got to stop.